exciting Halloween special. So, Halloween special. Now look, it's honeycomb season, and you know, the idea of having honeycomb on bonfire night just fills me with joy. The colour is exciting, the crack, the bubbles, the excitement, and all of the gorgeous things. So I'm B, you will know that because you clicked on my channel, and many of you will know that actually sugar is not my thing. However, there is a time and a place, and traditions are at the heart of me. And so once a year, we've got to do this, haven't we? And I want to show you how to make the most amazing honeycomb or hokey pokey, depending on where you are in the world, and to do it carefully, safely, and deliciously. So there's a bit of setting up to get organised with first of all. It's not something you can do in a flash, though the actual cooking of it doesn't take too long. But anyway, let's just talk about the ingredients and then get organised, and then you can make the most delicious, exciting treat for your Halloween. So first of all, I hope you like my pumpkin. Got a lovely vanilla candle, and he's been my friend for the last few days. That's number one. Now, I will put the recipe. At the moment, I'm playing with different recipes and quantities to see what I think is working best. But anyway, you need some white sugar. Caster sugar works well, or granulated sugar. So I've got a bag of that here, and I've got that measured out. So I'm going to put that in my pan. Now, choose quite a nice large pan, all right? Because when we make it, the final stage is all going to bubble up, and you need to make sure your pan is big enough to cope with that, okay? So that's number one. Number two ingredient, we're going to use golden syrup, okay? Now you can either weigh it, or you can measure it with a teaspoon, so a tablespoon. So if you're going to measure it like that, you can just put your pan on your scales and then measure it straight in, and it's about 100 grams. So that is what I'm going to do. And then, but I'll also show you, whoops, so you just got to be careful, but it's very useful doing it this way. That's 50 grams. Now, 1 tablespoon is about 20 grams because, well, it's probably officially 15, but we're always very generous. I'm nearly there, right, there's the blob, okay. So there we go. Now, but a tablespoon always ends up being very generous. So what I'm just going to say, if you want to use a tablespoon, you can do that. But I learned a really good little tip the other day, which is that you can actually oil it with a little bit of oil, and then I can wipe off the excess. And if you do that, then it doesn't stick so badly and it slips out. So that's a really helpful trick when you're measuring sticky things like black treacle. And all these things come about at Christmas, don't they? So useful trick there. What I'm also going to do is measure my bicarbonate of soda. So that's the third ingredient. And I'm going to have 2 teaspoons of that. So I'm just going to have that all measured at the ready. Okay, so I've got my white sugar, my caster granulated in the pan with the golden syrup, and I've got my bicarb. Now, I'm going to put that on a medium heat just to get that going. And what I want to happen is for the sugar and the golden syrup to melt, and I want the granules of the sugar to melt completely before I really start boiling it up. So that's just going to take a little bit of time and has to be done carefully. What I want to talk to you about is the safety of this, because we are basically boiling sugar. And when you boil sugar, it is very dangerous and you can burn. So if this is the first time you're doing it, and if you've got them available, I am going to suggest that you might want to use some of these disposable gloves. Now, the reason for these is not because they are going to protect your hand from the thing. Oh, we've got a telephone going here, how exciting. Maybe that's the alarm bell. Not because it's going to protect your hand from the heat, because it won't. But when you get boiling sugar or caramel on skin, it sticks. So if you see some of the boiling caramel land on your hand and you've got one of these, you can rip it off instantaneously to take the heat away. If you don't do that, you've just got to go to a cold tap and hope for the best, but knowing that the sugar is going to stick to your skin. So this is just a really sensible safety tip for you to use. You can use ordinary rubber gloves if you like, but I wholeheartedly recommend that as a safety thing to use when you're doing this for the first time until you're familiar with how it works. Right, that's just going to take a little bit of time, so I'm going to let that do that. But what I will do now is prepare two things. First of all, I'm going to prepare the tray, and then we're going to also prepare some chocolate to dip it into afterwards. So let me grab a tray. All right, now you want a tray with sides because it's going to spill. You don't want it spreading onto the worktop. And then you need some non-stick baking paper. So I'll just get some of that out and make sure that it really well covers the tray and is a bit bigger, because again, you don't want the sticky sugar to go onto the worktop or spill over the tray. Okay, so I'm just going to have that at the ready. Oops. So anyhow, you can use a large roasting tin, that will work, and just get that sitting there. So I'm ready with that. And then what we're going to do is get some chocolate melting, because it is really lovely to do that. Now, I'm just using a basic chocolate. You can get as posh as you like, but I think the thing is a dark chocolate is good because of the sweetness of the caramel and so on. So I'm using in UK something called a Cadbury's Bourneville. You choose the chocolate that you like. If I was just being offered a piece of chocolate, I would use 85% cacao chocolate, and I would be delighted. But for this purpose, this is fun and games and family. So I'm just breaking the chocolate into small pieces there, just into cubes, because it will then melt more easily. And while I'm doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this small pan on the heat. Now in there is about this much, just under an inch of water. And I'm going to put that on there to heat up. And for speed, I can put a lid on. That will help that go quickly. And then I can talk to you about melting chocolate and the rules to have a successful chocolate melting session. So the first thing would be, before you put your chocolate in the bowl, is to make sure that the bowl is absolutely dry. That's really good. Then you've got your chocolate in small pieces I've done here. There's one that got away. So we've got a small amount of water in the pan. And what I'm going to do is wait till it comes to the boil, so I can see that it's come to the boil, and then I will turn the heat off, and then I will put the chocolate on the top. Now, what I'm making sure here is that the chocolate bowl sits over the top of the water, not in the water. So it's basically being heated from steam underneath. That way, the chocolate's not going to go overheat, because I don't know about you, but if you sometimes melt chocolate too quickly and over too high heat, it can seize and cook, and it ends up in a great big lump. So what we want to do is just keep the water separate till it comes to the boil, turn off the heat, and then you can put the chocolate over the top, all right? And that keeps it all very safe, and it will melt quietly and happily on its own. So that's going on here. Now, I'm just going to take that off the heat because it's starting to get excited. And the last thing I just wanted to chat to you about is the weather, and making honeycomb, because it's a lovely thing to make honeycomb and be prepared and ready for the day ahead. However, if you've got a typical November day where it's wet and damp and a bit humid, then what you'll find if you make it the night before is that your honeycomb will just sink down a bit and it'll become really, really sticky. So still quite fun and delicious, but honeycomb should really be light and crisp and not sticky. So we've got two options here. Make it the day you want to eat it, or when you make it, you need to coat it completely with chocolate to seal out the air. An airtight container will also help. I just know my Tupperware is never that brilliant, but if you've got an airtight container, you can store it in layers with more non-stick paper, and that should keep it dry. Also in an airing cupboard, that would help as well. So there we go. We've got quite a few things to prepare you for a huge amount of success. And what I'm going to do now is just have a little chat to you, that water's just coming to boil, about the pan here and the melting of the sugar. So I just noticed that the golden syrup was starting to bubble a little bit in the middle. So that's great news because the pan is heated up. And then what I'm going to do is just keep a really close eye on it, because I want that sugar to melt before it really, really bubbles up. Now, if you can do it using a non-stick pan, that's lovely because it makes cleaning up later really good. If you can't, then, well, we didn't have non-stick pans when I grew up, so, you know, that makes me sound really old. But we didn't, and it was fine. You just were a bit more organised with the washing up. So what I'm just doing is I'm tipping this around and about. Now, you will note that I haven't got a wooden spoon going in there, because if I put a wooden spoon going in there, then all the sugar is just going to stick to it, and it's going to be a waste, okay? And what I don't want is it to mess with this process of the sugar melting, because it can make it crystallise, and I don't want crystals. So it's just gently starting to bubble. I've got the heat really nice and low, and I'm just shaking it around the pan so that the dry sugar crystals mix with the liquid, and that will help them dissolve. Now, you're probably going to find that you're going to get little bits of crystals just stuck just above the level of the melting sugar. And what we can do is we can be organised about those and get rid of them. So, I'm getting just a little bowl. Forgive me, you see my backside. A little bowl of water. And I'm going to have that at the ready. And in a little while, I can use that brush with a little bit of water just to brush around the top, not putting the bristles in the liquid, but you just brush and around the edges. And what happens is that the water drizzles down the side of the pan, and where it meets the sugar crystals, it helps them dissolve and they go back into the syrup. Right, now, oh, this is looking delicious. Okay. So basically what we're doing is just waiting on a low heat for that sugar to all dissolve. And when it's dissolved, we're just going to let it bubble until we see a lovely dark caramel appearing. Okay, now it's already a golden colour because of the golden syrup, but we want to have that lovely smell of caramel coming through, and almost just a slight smell of it burning. That's what I felt. And then you get that lovely bittersweet flavour, which is so, so delicious. Right, now over on this side, I'm going to turn that heat off as I promised, and I'm going to put the chocolate on the top. And actually I can take that off the heat, and that can just do its own thing, and that will be ready for much later down the line. So for now, I'm just going to keep my eye on this. Just gently taking it round and letting it all dissolve. Now, you know, if you are worried about a bit stuck in there, then don't worry, you can get a wooden spoon, but I'll just show you what happens is, and actually I've got a piece that was just sitting on the bottom there. I'm using granulated sugar today, which is what I've got. Caster sugar does melt a little bit more easily, but you know, I like to use what I've got. So I'm just melting that, and you see you just get some stuck on it. So there we go. We're just turning it around until that's all melted. So you can see in the pan there, nice golden colour. Right, I'm just going to keep watching this. It's going to probably take about 10 minutes, and I'm going to come back to you when it's just all bubbling up and looking delicious. So over and out. Knowing now we've got the chocolate melting, we've got the tray ready, we've got our bicarbonate soda ready, and if you want, you can use the gloves. Do remember, you must never leave this pan unattended, because this is caramel, and caramel burns and it will go on fire, and it's very dangerous. All right, so never leave the pan unattended while you're making this delicious, delicious honeycomb. And believe me, it is worth it. Okay, see you in a moment. Look at that gently bubbling syrup. Now I'm going to need to just move the pan around a little bit to make sure that it's evenly heating, and start to keep an eye for the caramel smell. Okay, hi. Now this is very exciting here. So I can see that it's all just bubbling away, and I can start to see that the colour is darkening a little bit. So it's becoming a really lovely sort of hazelnut colour, which means that I have to be prepared for the next stage. So I've got my bicarb of soda, and I've also got a cloth just wipes. Always nice to keep things wiped up. Now, I've got a wooden spoon because I am going to need that to stir in the bicarb with soda. But also, do you remember I've got my water? And if you can see any little crystally bits around the top edges, you can just get rid of those. Okay, now I've got my pan at the ready. So, and I've got at this stage the heat nice and high. And you know, you'll find that when it's bubbling, if you've got a couple of bits that aren't dissolving, just as I say, if you're managing it, then all is good. Now, I put the gloves on. I don't normally do this because I'm confident about what I'm doing. I haven't got dogs running around the kitchen or brothers, sisters, friends going, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And that's, of course, what the problem is distraction happens when you've got friends in the room and it's so exciting. And, you know, just keep everybody away and all will go swimmingly, because this really is such a fun, delicious thing to do. I'm excited. You've just got to be patient. Keep looking and say what the smell. Oh, I can actually smell the colour. Smell the colour. It sounds odd, doesn't it? Smell the colour. Well, you know, I can. Wafting up the smells, and I can start to see that it's becoming this lovely, deep, rich, sort of hazelnutty, pecan-nutty colour. Now, don't panic too much if you turn your back and suddenly you see smoke coming and you see a dark patch. Take it off the heat and then just add the bicarb and move forward, all right? Because you can still get a really, really lovely result. Okay, right, there has definitely been a slight change. The bubbles have subsided a little bit more and I can see that smoke and I can smell that flavour. So what we're going to do now is take it off the heat. You can put it on the worktop if you like. Then in goes the bicarb of soda, and we're going to have great fun now because we're just going to stir it. And can you see how exciting that gets? All the bubbles come up, so give it a really, really good stir. Get that bicarb stirred in beautifully, and then we're going to tip it into the prepared tray. So can you see how important it is to have that tray at the ready? Oh my goodness, look at that. Can you see how it's carrying on bubbling up? Now, don't worry too much about the scraping, but you can see now how important it was to have that big tray with the extra paper. So this is very exciting, very, very exciting. I'll just move that into the camera view. So it's all bubbled up. Now, what we've got to do now is be incredibly patient and let that cool down and go firm and solid, all right? I'm very excited. Now, while that's going to happen, and it's going to take about an hour or so, so you're going to have to go and, I don't know, carve more pumpkins or something like that. What we want to do is just consider the washing up. Now, what I'm going to do straight away is take this to the sink, fill it with water and just let it sit there. If you've got a non-stick pan, that's probably as much as you need to do and you'll find it will wash off quite well. If not, the traditional way of doing it is fill your pan with water and put it back on the stove and let it come to the boil with the wooden spoon inside, and that will clean itself beautifully. So there's always a way to do it. My hands are in a good place. I haven't got burnt, so I can take these off and use them for another day. So see you in a moment for the next stage when honeycomb has become really brittle and is ready for its chocolate. Okay, bye-bye. Goody gumdrops, we might say. Right now, this is actually about half an hour later, not even that, since I made this gorgeous honeycomb. And it is firm and it's cool. I mean, it's slightly tepid still, but we can move on to the next stage. So, oh, it's light as a feather. It's absolutely amazing. Right, so my pan, my caramel pan is now in the sink, covered with water, nearly clean. The chocolate has melted and I've taken it off the heat because actually what I want it to do now is cool down a little bit, and so it's just become a little bit thicker and more luscious, which is lovely. So I can well, sometimes there's an idea to keep the pan of hot water just there in case it gets a little bit too solid, but I'm just going to move quite quickly on with this, and so we'll get it out of the way. I'll just move that so I don't need it. Right, now, so I think one of the most fun things to do here is just to use your hands and just break up what I think is really nice chunky shards of the honeycomb. Oh, it just feels as light as a feather. Look at that. So you can have fun breaking up large pieces, small pieces. These are kind of what I call adult pieces. Kids pieces are fun. It's just, can you tell I'm getting excited? Now, and I've got my chocolate here, so I'm just going to clean the spatula. And so I've got these, and I'm laying them on a tray with, again, more of the non-stick paper. So that's important, okay? If you haven't got non-stick paper, what you can do is use ordinary greaseproof paper or a tin foil, and you can just put a very thin layer of oil on it. And when I mean that, what you do is you get a piece of kitchen paper, just a piece of kitchen paper like this, and you dip it in a little bit of ordinary oil, ordinary vegetable oil, and then you wipe it over. And that will mean that the honeycomb won't stick. So there's always a way around if you haven't quite got what you need. Right, and what I'm going to do here is get a piece, and I'm going to half dip it in. Oh my goodness. And then let that drain off. Now, if your chocolate is a little bit hot and it runs off really quickly, don't panic, because you can just do what we call double dipping. So what we'll do is we'll let that solidify on the tray, and then we can go back in and do another layer later on. This is delicious, delicious. Okay, now another thing you could do if you wanted, I'm trying to think of the honeycomb bar that we buy in the shops. If you wanted whole pieces of honeycomb to get covered, you could, let me show you, get a rack. And then with another tray, I'm just going to do it on the end here just to show you. And maybe I'll just get a small piece to show you. Oh. And you could put them on there, and then you could get a nice basting spoon, and then you could just coat the whole thing. All right. Now, that'll coat it on one side, and can you see here that underneath I've got the non-stick paper which is catching the drips, okay? So it's coated one side, you need to let it get solid, and then you'll need to repeat it on the other side. So that's another option. Anyway, meanwhile, I'm just going to have fun carrying on dipping these in, and then they need to be left to get set. And then guess what? You get to enjoy them. So this will also freeze really well. So that is another way of getting round the situation when you've got this really dark, humid weather. Oh, what fun. Right, leave me in bliss. I'm just going to carry on in my own little world, dipping and enjoying. So see you soon. No finger licking just yet.